Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick. I've been teaching for about 10 plus years now at every level from kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school, university, and business professionals. One of the questions I'm asked often is what are the differences between teaching adults and kids? Well, I'm going to go over six key areas that you'll encounter in the classroom. Now, one thing to remember from the beginning is that it's not like black and white, where you have two completely different um, learning situations. You'll often find that teaching adults and kids do have many similarities. It's just really the subtle differences that will help make your class more fun, rewarding, and successful. The first is self motivation and classroom management. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, let's think about it. Adults, you need to have the opportunity to moderate discussions, meaning that you want to keep the flow going and you don't want what the so called steamrollers. Those are some students whose language is perhaps better than the others, or for other reasons would like to hear their own voices heard. It's important to manage that. Also, you need to know that what you're trying to accomplish, that everyone understands it, that you've given the instructions clearly, and that secondly, that they're able to do it, that you've given them the tools, worksheets, cards, using role plays. The instructions are clear and they have a time limit, and you kind of set the parameter. If you get that clearly understood at the beginning, the students will then know what to do and how to do it. Now, with kids, a little bit easier. Kids, however, they need to learn how to pay attention and to consistently do their work. Now, that can be a little bit more challenging. We'll talk about different ways to accomplish that in just a moment. The second thing that makes the classes different is the content of the class. With adults, you'll find that it needs to be varied, and you need to try to make it as relevant as possible to their lives or professions. With kids, it's going to be fairly simple content. Things like conversations, stories, other assignments often will be things about what did you do today? What's your favorite pet? Your favorite holiday? Things of that nature. Things that they can easily relate to and that they can easily put into context. The third thing is fun and games. Everyone loves fun and games. The big difference with adults, however, is that you want to keep things serious, but not too serious. You want to be likable. Let's talk about adults for a moment. With adults, you need to obviously be able to engage them. They too want to have fun, and they need to have the opportunity to think creatively. Conversation based activities such as card games or activities like crossword puzzles generally work well. Now, things to remember about adults, however, is that they tend to be less energetic than kids. They're also reluctant more often to get out of their seats and to do something. So you need to find ways to motivate them. Younger kids, on the other hand, the younger they are, the more important games are, generally speaking. And it also helps you to manage the class. If they're busy, then they'll probably not be a problem for you. It also provides them an outlet for their natural restlessness. And it gives them a chance to use what they've learned in a less controlled and a more spontaneous fashion. And the other thing about kids too is that they will quickly jump at any opportunity just to get out of their seats and to do something fun. So with kids, games are always a winner. Just remember though, as a teacher, you have a responsibility to make sure those learning points and your goals that you've set are being met. The fourth item which you'll find is a key difference, is the expectations. Now, with adults, usually they're choosing to pursue an English as second language, an ESL education to boost their career or their studies. If they're paying out of pocket, they're going to want to get their money's worth. And they can also oftentimes give you complex questions about grammar or vocabulary, so be prepared for that. And finally, then they can have pretty high standards because either their job is watching their progress or they themselves are really looking to accomplish something on a very personal level. Kids, on the other hand, most of them don't spend a lot of time thinking about what they want to get out of class. Still, it's your responsibility as a teacher to assure that you're giving them the best education you possibly can. The other thing to keep in mind too is that their parents, depending on the culture and the country you're teaching in, may also have very high expectations. So something to keep in mind. Number 5, students' enthusiasm and willingness to speak up. Now, with adults, the thing with adults is that many of them, especially here in Asia, where I've had the bulk of my teaching experience, have spent decades in schools that focus mainly on getting the right answers and not making mistakes. Now, having said that, what that often lends itself to then is that many adults, they don't want to look stupid. So they prefer to simply be quiet, and hopefully they won't be tested on it, or they won't have to encounter that particular learning point again. Now, as an educator, what that means is that you do need to make a special effort to get older students to speak up regularly, and that's where moderating discussions becomes really important. Kids, on the other hand, are quick to jump on anything, as I suggested earlier, that's fun, that allows them to yell and to play. And they're more willing to use language spontaneously and a lot less afraid of making mistakes. Most kids are pretty quick to pick up on the key part of language acquisition, which is communication, talking. And kids like to talk. So if you can find the right activities for them, you'll find that that part of your class won't provide you too much difficulty. Your relationship to students. Now, adults are going to be a similar age to you. Some may be older, certainly, and this can be cool since you can get to know them as people, and you can maybe also learn from them and perhaps also become their friends. On the other hand, teaching adults can be a little intimidating, especially if they're older or professionals. I'll give you a personal example. When I was teaching in Spain, I used to go out to a factory site, and I forget if it was a sales department or a marketing department, something of that nature. And not only did I have a group of about 20 mid-level professionals in that classroom, but I also had their boss. So from the outset, it created a challenging learning environment because the students were it was like 19 regular workers and then the one boss, and he always sat right next to me at the head of the table. And there were times where he would interrupt me or suggest another way of doing things. As a teacher, I found that it was my first year of teaching, so I had things I did need to work on, but I felt that was a real challenge for me to try to overcome and to try to take back charge of the class because of course there were certain things that I wanted to cover in the class, and whether or not you have a curriculum as a teacher, you probably are going to come prepared and have certain things that you want to assure that the students have learned. If you have somebody else questioning your ability to do so or the method that you're using. And plus, if that person is a higher authority figure than you are, then that may lead to difficulties in getting your students' attention. Um, Finally, kids. How are kids' relationships different to the teacher? Well, it's clear that you're the authority figure and in charge of the class. I mean, after all, you're the tallest person there. Um, Now, they may challenge you and push to test to see where you draw the line. Now, I had this more often happen with boys, and more frequently it happened with my middle school age students and my high school students. Um, they Perhaps it's just a popularity thing. They want to see, they want to impress on their friends, or they simply don't want to do the activity and they want to see how far can I get away with until the teacher finally gives up. My strength and sometimes weakness was that I would never give up. And sometimes it may be a little bit, appear a little bit strict or perhaps unpopular with some students. Um, Most students came around after a while when they realized that I was sincere, I was earnest, and I really did care about their education. Some of the students I never reached, and it's a sad reality of teaching is that, especially with larger classrooms, you're not going to be able to please everyone, and some students simply don't want to be there. Not to bum you out, but if you can understand that reality and know that if you consistently work hard, if you are persistent in your classroom rules, and you allow them too to have a little bit of fun, be it adults or kids, you'll find that you're going to have a very rewarding experience. And at the end, there are pros and cons of teaching either kids or adults. The good news is that knowing the differences and understanding your own temperament, you'll find that working with either group. Myself, I do a mix now. I teach both kids and adults and busy professionals, and sure, there's a transition to make between one class and the next, especially if you have them back to back. But otherwise, I've found both groups to be very rewarding, given the opportunity to have experienced them myself. Thanks very much and good luck.